All right, everybody. It's so good to see so many people in the room. I want to start off with the quote that a lot of people have been quoting this week, which is from John Lewis. Democracy is not a state, it is an act. And in Virginia, it is our time to act. We've spent time electing Democrats to our state House and Senate, and now is our legislative session. And it is our turn to help make sure that the progressive policies that we care about are going to be voted on and passed. So this coming week for the coalition is all about our press conference to highlight some of these important bills. And so what I want to do is tell you what some of our important priorities are. The first is promote fairness and transparency in our elections and politics. The next is create environmentally healthy communities and protect against the impact of climate change. We want to make Virginia safer and healthier for all, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, and promote equity, support our workforce, and advance the rights of all Virginia residents. What's great is that you'll be hearing about a number of these issues just on this call today, but I really want to encourage you to join us at our press conference on Tuesday, January 12th at 12 p.m., where you can hear more about our priority bills. It's important that we all understand the issues so that when we start advocating for them, by calling our legislators, emailing our legislators, we know what we're talking about. So please join us. I'm going to put the link in the chat so that you can register for the press conference. And I'm also going to put my email in case you want to be added to our list for legislative calls to action. It's going to be a really short session this time, so these are going to be coming at us every couple of days. If you are willing and able, we would love your help contacting our legislators to make sure these important policies get passed this year. So thank you so much. Join us in our action. And thank you for coming to the press conference and showing our legislators that we've got their back.
Yes, so important. And Louisa, I'm sure you put those links in the chat or will do, so that's awesome. For those of you just tuning in, we are getting, we will have Gerry Connolly will pop in the show when he's able. Right now, he's listening to Speaker Pelosi give the updates, so just stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, we obviously have a great show planned, and I know today we enter it with a heavy heart, and you know we were really going with the labor theme of 9 to 5, and we really had to switch it up to rise up. And this is why it's so great to have this show every Friday to come together to talk about what matters, and really recognize what's going on in the Capitol. It needs to be addressed and needs to be addressed quickly, and also for the loss of life that we really need to really today, you know, really think about what that all means for our country. Okay, so I'd like to have pop Krista on the screen here too, and we're going to start with our next segment of the about labor. And like I said, this is about this section is with David and Virginia Diamond, and also Kathy Tran and Delegate Paul Krizek. If we can put them up on the screen too, please. And thank you for being here. And this is a very important topic about when we talk about the power of community. And I was raised in a union family, and my father was a master plumber in Ohio, and I knew no other life but union life. So, you know, so when you guys are in the Virginia, we live in a state of Virginia, it was new to me to move somewhere that this right to work thing. I was like, oh, this is an interesting state to live in. And it took me a while. Paul, I read your article about repealing the right to work and all that. So I'm going to kick it over to Krista, who would talk to you guys about what you are doing in the legislative session this year about addressing essential workers. Take it away, Krista.
Absolutely. Thank you, Katherine. Thank you, Louisa, for that reminder that we need to act. And if I could just say first to Delegate Krizek and Delegate Tran, it is after everything that happened this week, and we should always be thankful for our legislators when we're putting in the work on the ground and on the front lines in that sense. But it's just so nice to sit here and look at you two to moral, to strong, to legislators. And we're just really thankful to have you here in Virginia. But as Katherine mentioned, we want to talk about labor and workers' rights. And last year, definitely that came to the forefront, even though these issues should be at the top of our minds all the time. Obviously, everything with COVID kind of forced us to rethink about how we think about labor and workers' rights. Can both of you just talk about what are your plans for this General Assembly session? And then moving forward, we know it's going to be a short session. Everything may not be accomplished this year. And in the future, what are our immediate plans to handle a lot of the issues we have with workers' rights in Virginia?
You want to start, Kathy? Or...
No, yeah. I defer to you, my senior colleague and also chair of the Labor Caucus. So go ahead.
I want to thank everybody that's on the call here, and thank Network Nova for putting these on and for educating us, and Christopher for your advocacy especially. And it's great to be on a panel with my friends David and Ginny, who do so much and work twice as hard as we do, and we're working pretty hard. I know Kathy is. It's today's the deadline, in fact, to get our budget amendments done by noon, and Tuesday, I believe, is the deadline to get our bills put in, and we're only able to do 7 this year. It is going to be a very strange experience, as it kind of is. Even I'm still not used to these Zoom calls, and I love the the interaction, live interaction. I know we all miss that, but the COVID vaccine is on its way, and it's already many healthcare workers are getting vaccinated and getting their first shots in arms, and I'm confident that we will see. I think on Monday, in fact, I'll have a little COVID update. I know you're going to talk about this a little later, but I think this is top of mind. On Monday, the governor is going to be announcing, or at least the Virginia Health Department, the 1B rollout. So that's coming. But let me just say, we have made some great strides for labor. Joe Biden said that we build labor, we build America, we build labor, we build the middle class. And you've seen the union decline throughout the nation and what that has done. It goes hand in hand with growing income disparity between the very wealthy and the rest of us, frankly. But that gulf has increased, and we are now. It's only been a year. I heard former Speaker Kirk Cox say something about blaming the Democrats for the past 2 years. We've only been in power just a year now. We've had 2 sessions because we had the special session, and we have this one coming up next Wednesday. But we are making some great strides, and a lot of the good laws that we passed haven't gone into effect. Unfortunately, even though we have the Senate majority and the House majority, the Senate majority is much slimmer. And so it was difficult to get everything we wanted. Many of the bills we had got watered down. And then the deadline or the enactments for many of the laws are starting on May 1st instead of usually it would be July 1. So we're almost a year later. What we're going to have, one of those is the minimum wage, and I think that it's not $15 an hour, but it is on the path towards $15 an hour. It doesn't include everybody. In fact, one of the bills that we have, it's a priority of the chair of the Labor and Commerce Committee, who's Joanne Ward. She has got a bill in to get rid of the exemption for farm workers. We almost didn't pass the bill last year. I was on the conference committee for the minimum wage bill, and it was a battle in the hallway. These conference committees we don't really actually have a meeting. We just go somewhere in the corner of the hall or the room or the chamber, and we scream at each other. We try to get them to agree to what we're trying to do. It's crazy. So that, thanks to Joanne Ward's leadership and also the speaker who really pushed it, Eileen Fillercorn, and colleagues like Kathy Tran and our Labor Caucus members, we were able to get the minimum wage increase. But there were a lot of we also got the collective bargaining, again, watered down. And again, it starts on May 1st, which is critical. That's probably the most important bill that we've passed. But there are things that we did not do and we still need to do. We still are fighting. Delegate Guzman is fighting for sick leave. Sick leave right now, her bill, I think, well, let me just tell you what happened last year. We got it all the way to the conference committee. Again, I was on that conference committee. And unfortunately, the Senate killed it in the conference. We could not, there was nothing we could do to get sick leave passed. And it was right, you remember the last day of the session was the beginning of the COVID pandemic, really. And I thought then that maybe when we came back for the special session, we had an opportunity to try again. Delegate Guzman tried again, and Senator Favola had the same or similar effort in the Senate, and neither of them were able to get through the Senate. And so that was a disappointment. And again, we tailored it more towards COVID. In that effort. So now we're giving it a third shot. No seats have changed hands, right? So it's the same members. So it always feels like you're bashing your head up against a brick wall when you have the same people in the same seats. I mean, if they've already told us no twice, why are we going again? But you cannot stop. You have to fight, and we're going to fight. And I think I kind of look at what that horrible assault on the Capitol the other day. Was it yesterday? It feels like over 2 days ago now. And I'm hoping that right now we're going to learn from our congressman that they're going to impeach the president. He needs to, but I feel like appeasement is what has kind of led us to this place. And we can't appease anybody on these labor issues either. And we have to fight for sick leave. We have to fight for those 41% of private sector workers that don't have sick leave. They don't have any paid time off. That's 1.2 million Virginians, 1.2 million people who are working. Most of those people are in jobs that cannot go online and cannot do what we're doing right now. They have to be there physically, like working in grocery stores, food retail, that kind of thing. The home care workers that David represents, those people they need to have paid leave. It's a travesty, and it's tragic that in this day and age in our country, in Virginia, that people are not given, and all we're asking is for 40 hours. I doubt there's a country in Europe that doesn't have it, and I know most states have it. I mean, we're not asking for a lot. So Favola has another bill she's going to try, and Guzman has one. And it's a little bit, it's watered down because we have to start at a new place. But Favola is only asking that workers who have sick leave can use it for family members, to care for family members. Some businesses allow this, but a lot do not. So we're just trying, at this point, we're just trying to make some incremental change. And often in the General Assembly, I always tell people, you probably heard this a million times, it's getting the camel's nose under the tent. You get that camel's nose under, and then you can get the neck under the next year. And before you know it, you can push that whole camel under the tent. And that's what I'm always telling my colleagues, look, we just need the nose, because we know we can fix it. Just like that sick leave bill. Just like the minimum wage bill, Jawan really didn't want those farmers not to have minimum wage increase. They deserve it. They need it. They're working. They're keeping us alive and providing us the food we live and sustain us. And yet we weren't able to get them minimum wage increase. That's ridiculous. And so she knows that she didn't get it in last year, so she's trying this year. So we got that camel's nose. We probably got more than the camel's nose last year. We got the head and the neck, and now she's going to go for some of the upper haunch of the camel. But that's really what we try to do. And Favola's bill, Guzman's bill is similar. I think hers would just be 40 hours of sick leave for essential workers. That would include home care workers. So if you can't get essential workers sick leave during a pandemic of this critical, nature, during this session, I don't know why we're even delegates and senators. I mean, we owe it to the people and to the workers of Virginia to do that. So there are a number of other bills. I don't want to bogart all the time here.
Yeah.
But I appreciate everything you guys are doing and getting, and I know you did a lot of work on those Georgia elections too and our specials. So thank you very much. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Delegate Krizek, for your energy, for your focus. We're definitely going to need that for a long time, but definitely during special sessions. So Delegate Tran, is there anything else you'd like to add about what you really wanted to see done in 2021 in terms of labor?
Oh, thank you so much, Krista. And I really appreciate Delegate Krizek for painting the big picture. And I think you all can see why his leadership for our Labor Caucus is so important and helps to really move our agenda forward. I am just so excited to join. I haven't been able to participate in one of your Friday lunches yet. And so it was just great to see so many familiar faces pop up on the screen when I jumped on. So this is really, really exciting. And I think just before I get into what I see moving forward, I think what happened this week made me feel really sad and angry and worried and a little bit, when those moments feel like I just got to get back into bed and pull the covers over my head because I can't believe we're at this point, right? But it's these types of conversations and these types of communities that make me realize this is really America, and that our energies and our passion is really going to help make the progress that we're all so desperately seeking and we also desperately need. So thank you so much for being a part of this movement and for sustaining this since 2017. I think that is truly incredible. I think that Delegate Krizek painted the big picture in terms of like the major labor policies that we're looking forward at. I think what I'm hoping we'll also see are bills that on issues that might not get as much attention, right? But also help to make it safe for all workers to go to work, for all individuals to participate equally in the workforce and have access to be able to provide for their families. So whether it's making sure that we're trying to have a better, hold on one quick second. He's crying. Baby Warren just woke up. Making sure that, that like refugees are able to, what are their barriers to the workforce? We have a really vibrant refugee community in Virginia. And while the numbers of refugees being admitted to the US, dropped off the cliff under the Trump administration, Biden has promised to bring them back up. So we want to be prepared to make sure that they're able to participate as well and provide for their families. If you are called back to work and you're on unemployment insurance, but you're unable to go, right, you want to refuse that callback because of really good reasons that we don't allow for now, you should be able to. Like if you have COVID or if your workplace doesn't meet the Department of Labor standards, you should be able to stay home. So making sure that we're able to pass that bill, making sure that we are increasing anti-discrimination protections in employment for people with disabilities and for military service members and their spouses. Oh, is that the congressman? I will stop.
Do we have oh, there he is. Awesome. Thank you, Kathy, for noting that. Welcome, Congressman. You're in good company. We're so grateful to have you. And we're just going to go straight to what's happening. I'm sure that it's a solemn moment for you, and we're hoping to hear what our plans are.
Thank you so much. And forgive me for having to go back and forth, but I am simultaneously participating in the Democratic Caucus conference call, Zoom, where we are talking about the aftermath of the tragedy of Wednesday and what we do about it. Let me begin by saying we cannot overstate the gravity of what occurred on Wednesday. It was premeditated. It was planned. It really exposed for all of us what a threat extreme right-wing elements are in the United States to our democracy. I was on the floor of the House debating the certification of the results from Arizona. We had had a joint session to count the ballots, and under the law, if there is a signed objection to the results of any particular state, signed by a member of the House and a member of the Senate in writing, the joint session must recess and the two bodies reconvene separately for a 2-hour debate and then a vote on whether or not to accept the results. During the debate in the House on Arizona, after we had reconvened as separate bodies, I had moved from the House gallery to the House floor, and I had gone to the House floor because when I was coming out of antechamber, going back into the House, I was going to the House gallery actually, in the 3rd floor. I was told by the Speaker's staff to go to the House floor instead, that we were going to have to shelter in place in the House floor, and that shocked me. I could hear pounding getting closer and was not quite sure what that was. And at that point, we didn't have a lot of intelligence about what was happening. We were hearing that they had managed to get in the building, and that was alarming. I don't think we realized until very late in the game that how close they were to the House chamber. So there were about 150 members of Congress in the House chamber at that point. More Republicans than Democrats, because we were trying to stay in our offices. I was on the floor because I wanted to witness and be part of directly the counting of ballots and to support the results. And I saw the Speaker escorted off the floor very rapidly. And then I saw members of the Sergeant at Arms start to secure the doors inside, meaning we were being locked inside. And then in an unprecedented move, the presiding officer who had replaced Nancy Pelosi said that we were going to hear a message from the police. Now, almost nobody gets to address the Congress from the podium, but the police spokesperson got up and asked us to get ready gas masks, and that there were gas masks under every chair. I didn't know that. I was shocked. I thought, you want us to put on gas masks on the floor of the House of Representatives? And he said, yes, because they had breached the rotunda and statuary hall. That meant they were within a few hundred feet of the House chamber, coming that direction. And he said, don't put it on yet, but get it ready. So as you might imagine, that created enormous commotion. The chaplain, a brand new chaplain, first female chaplain in the House, then got up to give a prayer, which I have to admit, I don't know that a lot of people paid attention to, because by that point, people were very aware of the menace and how close it was. What we didn't realize was that the mob was coming from two directions, from Statuary Hall on the Republican side of the floor, but also from the corridor outside the Speaker's lobby on the Democratic side. We tried to resume the debate and did briefly, and then again, the presiding officer said, we're going to have another message from the police, and we were told that we had to evacuate immediately and that we needed to move very fast, that danger was very close. I tend to get very calm in emergency situations, and so I was not afraid. I was concerned about the menace and realized that whatever was going on was now out of control and that danger was really imminent. So I kind of held back to make sure others got out first, older members, people who were really worried, staff, members of the press. And as I was in the last group exiting the floor chamber, I turned to my left, which is the Democratic side of the Speaker's lobby, and the two doors that allow you to enter the Speaker's lobby were barricaded. And there were all these faces and hands pounding at the windows. And that is about 5 feet from the House chamber floor. And they were clearly menacing and threatening. And it was that shortly after I left to go on the evacuation downstairs to the sub-basement that a woman tragically attempted to come through the window in that door that I had just looked at and was shot and killed. But I can tell you that in escaping to a shelter in the Longworth building, about 150 of us were housed there and couldn't leave for about 3.5 hours. We didn't know whether that would be stormed as well. And if it was, what would that mob do having 150 members of Congress and staff, key staff from the floor and the clerk's office at their mercy? I was also worried about my staff. My ledge director, my staff director, and my new district director were all in my office in Rayburn. And I didn't know, were they okay? Had the mob breached our office buildings as well? I knew that Cannon, one of the 3 office buildings, had been evacuated, and people were told to go to Longworth and Rayburn. And there were reports of gunshot. We didn't know whether the mob was shooting too. We did know that they had weapons. We know that they also had plastic handcuffs, presumably to hold people hostage and detain them, presumably members of Congress. There's a lot of criticism about the Capitol Hill police response, and deservedly so at the macro level. But I want you all to know that there were a lot of heroic actions by the police and by the sergeant at arms personnel. They worked heroically to try at a last minute to save members of the House who were in the process of doing their constitutional duty and counting the ballots for President and Vice President of the United States. And they ultimately helped with support from Maryland and DC and Virginia to clear the Capitol grounds ultimately. And one of the things I want you to know is my reaction was, they are not going to prevail. Threat and intimidation and violence cannot be allowed to prevail. We must resume, no matter what the hour, in that House chamber and count those ballots until Biden and Harris are declared the winners. Because the world was watching what was happening to American democracy. And no greater symbol and act could have been taken than for us to take back that chamber, which, by the way, was never breached. The Senate chamber was breached and, in fact, overrun. And there is that iconic picture of the so-called QAnon shaman sitting in the presiding officer's chair. This was a violent event. 50 members of the police department, Capitol Hill Police, were injured, and tragically, one of them died last night, apparently having been violently injured with a fire extinguisher in trying to prevent the crowd, the mob, from succeeding. 4 others have also died, one being shot. It is important for American democracy that all of us have the intestinal fortitude to stand up to this threat. The Women's Summit has been doing that. And I can't tell you how important what you've done is. Whether you participated in conferences, wrote postcards, made phone calls, wrote checks, volunteered. It mattered. We won the election by 7.5 million vote plurality. And just this week, against a lot of odds, we won 2 Senate seats, not 1, but 2 in Georgia, of all places, giving us the majority in the US Senate. And we confirmed at 3:32 in the morning, Thursday morning, after all of this violence and chaos, we confirmed Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who will be sworn into office on the 20th of January in 12 days. We fought for democracy. You have been fighting for democracy. And you matter. What you have been doing matters. We didn't allow Trump and his ilk to represent America. We didn't allow them to take over America. Wednesday represented, at a macro level, a signal failure on the part of security to secure the most sacred place in American democracy, the United States Capitol. During the Civil War, the darkest time in our history, Abraham Lincoln insisted that the dome of the Capitol be completed. It was not completed. If you look at a picture of his first inauguration in March of 1861, you'll notice the scaffolding and there's construction work, but the dome is not there. It's only half built. 4 years later, in a second inaugural, the dome is completed. He was criticized. Why are you spending resources to complete this building when our men, in those days men, need blankets and bullets to win this Civil War? And he said, we have to think beyond that. We have to rebuild, we have to build the dome, finish the dome as a symbol of rebuilding the country and a symbol of unity that will follow. That was a pretty dark day. That was kind of a vision not shared by everyone. Many thought naive. But after the horror of Wednesday, we need to celebrate the fact that, but democracy did prevail. We did take back control of the Capitol. We did resume our business, and we fulfilled our constitutional duty. In the threat of violence and in the chaos of a premeditated insurrection incited by the President of the United States. So as we go forward, remember how important what you do and say is and has been. It may seem that your contribution is minimal. It isn't. Everything we do and say matters. In trying to build shared values in America, in trying to rebuild a political consensus that allows our country to go forward in a progressive way, expanding rights for everybody, respecting the rights of everybody, a nation that respects the rule of law, not the rule of the mob. The mob lost Wednesday, and we have to build on that victory to make sure that never happens again, and that those elements are called out and held accountable, and we will. And that has to start with the President of the United States. I have signed on to 2 impeachment resolutions, and I certainly support the effort under the 25th Amendment to try to remove him. We have 12 more days. He can still do damage. He's unhinged and he's unfit. And he incited this violence quite deliberately. That's what motivated them to go to the Capitol and storm it. So I want you all to know how proud I am to be a Democrat, how proud I am to be a member of the House of Representatives, how proud I am to represent all of you, whether you're in my district or not. And I want you to know that I am determined. I'm not afraid. I will not be intimidated, and I hope you won't either.
Yes.
We will stand up for the best of what America represents, and we will call out its worst, because that's the only way we recover from this. But we will recover from this, and we'll build our own metaphoric Capitol dome as we do so. God bless you all, and thank you for having me here today.
Congressman, thank you so much. It's just so moving to have you here. I know that everything in the chat, we're hearing how much people love and care about our country and you and your bravery. And I just so want to say thank you for being here. I think people needed to hear from leadership like you. And there are a lot of questions in that chat, but we won't be able to get to them. People really want to know that they believe that there has to be accountability, or else nothing, it's so important. And I have one question before you leave. I know
Sure.
we're focused on the mob and the people outside, but this was obviously created by misinformation, years of this, QAnon. It's the Republican Party that's the issue, that was inside in suits and pearls and high heels on that floor that wanted to stop the count. And I heard a representative from Texas say on Fox, if the protesters only waited, we were doing the same thing inside. They just didn't give us enough time. They stopped the process. I feel like the Republicans may like to point outside this too, but I think this is something inside the party that we need to hold them accountable. If we don't, they just can't walk back in. I think that is the biggest thing on all of our minds. And what do you think about what's going to happen next around that? Because that's the issue here, right? I mean,
I will be honest with you. During when the Civil War broke out, the Congress evicted members from the seceding states who were traitors. I believe that those who actively sought to align themselves with the insurrectionists Wednesday, or who encouraged them, exhorted them, frankly, should be evicted from the United States Congress. I will be honest with you, I don't know how I'm going to proceed with my own colleagues here in Virginia. How do we have another delegation meeting to talk about, the shipyard in Norfolk, when I'm looking at Rob Whitman and Ben Klein and this new guy, Good, and Morgan Griffin, who all felt it was perfectly acceptable to vote to overturn results of 6 duly certified, audited, and judicially approved results. Certified, I might add. 5 of those 6 states had Republican legislatures. And many of them had Republican governors. They all certified the elections. But that didn't stop cowards like, I won't name names, but I think in many ways, the worst people are the ones who know better, who aren't really ideologues, but go along to get along. Give me a true believer, frankly, than those weak-kneed characters who lack any intestinal fortitude to stand up for principle. The worst that can happen is you lose your job. Riggleman, Denver Riggleman lost his job because he dared legally to preside over a same-sex wedding. That was an unforgivable sin as a conservative, libertarian-oriented Republican.
Right.
But I'll tell you this, Denver Riggleman can look in a mirror today.
Yes, he can.
And he can live with what he sees. Can Rob Whitman do that? Can Morgan Griffith do that? How do they look back at the events of Wednesday they helped create and propel and live with themselves?
I think it's like, again, like you said, after the Confederacy, after the Civil War, we're dealing with this now still because we didn't deal with it then. And I think that we can't allow them to go back and just act like, oh, well, I didn't get all the power I wanted. I did all this destruction and here I go again. So I appreciate those comments and I appreciate you coming here, and it means a world to everybody in this room, because we know this isn't the end of it. This could be the start of it. And so to know that you're there working on this means a lot, and just prayers to you and your family and everybody down there, and just we'll stay in touch. And thank you for being here today.
And let me just say, it works the other way too. It matters so much to me and my staff that you are there, that you've got our backs, that you're on your mission, which allows our mission to be successful. So don't be discouraged by this. Be fortified. Rededicate yourselves. I'm going to do that, and I hope you will do it too, because the stakes are high, and you know what? We're winning. That's the desperation behind what happened Wednesday. They know they're actually losing, and I don't just mean elections. I mean they're losing popular opinion. They're losing ground in the country. Not that they ever had a majority, but they're losing ground with their arguments and their craziness and their extremism. And we're on a path that ultimately I think will save the country from those elements. So keep up the good fight.
Well, we will. Everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you, Gerry.
Sorry, I got to run.
No, well, thank you so much. So when we talked about today, getting into the room to rise up, I'm glad that that the Congressman ended that for us with rise up. I mean, with our fortitude moving forward. And I know that this is why we gather every Friday and we pivot our programming, because we're live and we can do this. And we feel like it's so important because we need to be activated. We need to stay in touch. And the only way to really survive this is to stick together and act and hold these people accountable. So I know that all of you are in this chat saying that, and I think we're going to do that. I know the indivisibles are rising up and protesting Rob Whitman, and they're going with masks on, and they want him to be unseated. And I think we should follow in that way. So I know it's going to be hard to pivot back, but we have a few minutes. If you want to stay with us, great. I think Kathy Tran has to leave in a few minutes. So Kathy, do you want to just talk about what's on your mind right now with what you heard, but just more or less that fighting for the labor, why these things are going to be important to really understand that why the Republicans, or I don't want to pick on people, but why our values are so meaningful, and why workers' rights, even in this middle of this chaos, we have to continue to fight for what's right and our values. And if you can bring David and Ginny back up on the screen as well, because they didn't get a chance to talk. But Kathy, if you have a few words, and then we'll go to David and Ginny. And I know it's hard to proceed, but we know that we got to talk about this in context. So go ahead, Kathy.
And I'll wrap up. Thank you so much. It's lunch break during remote learning, so you have, or I think meeting my entire family now. But I just said a little bit. I mean, I'm just still absorbing Congressman Gerry's first-person account, and he moved me to tears.
Yes.
But also the gravity of the situation really came home, right? It's different than just the images. And I think I will say I shared, Delegate Krizek talked about big picture policies. I mentioned some of the other ways, smaller bills and smaller ideas, but still impactful in making sure that everybody has access to a safe and access to good jobs, right? Benefits, good pay, and safe workplaces. But I will leave you with this thought and why I'm in this and why it's so important. So many of you are meeting Baby Warren for the first time.
Hi, Baby Warren.
Hi. We're Warren Democrats in this house, and so he was inspired. His name's inspired by Senator Elizabeth Warren, and his middle name is Bao Chao, which is means a prized treasure. So to us, his name is, standing that his name means justice is a prized treasure that we must all stand up for. And I think it's very apropos in this moment to remember what our values are, how by standing up for those values, we are lifting everybody up. And I think that that is something we must just absolutely continue to do. So thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, thank you, Kathy. And that, I think that with this going on, our children, seeing a child, seeing a baby, it just lights our hearts. And this is why we're fighting. So David, so thank you, Kathy. We appreciate everything. And we'll be in touch with you as well over the session. And thank you so much. So David, if you could unmute yourself. Paul, do you have to leave?
Yeah,
Paul?
I've got to go to appropriations meeting in 6 minutes.
Thank you.
I just want to say, and thank Kathy again, and thank and David and Jeannie are going to speak, and what they say is critically important. But I do want to let you know I saw some of the chat stuff, so I wanted to address some of it really quickly. We've got a big legislative agenda, even though we are all kind of restricted with 7 bills only. We've got some good budget amendments we're working on. As soon as I get off this phone after appropriations, I'm going to be working on those. We still have to get these in, but we have bills. We've got a number of building trades legislation priorities that we're focusing on around wage theft. I've got a bill helping the firefighters fighting carcinogenic issues that they're having. And one of the things we're trying to do is make that a priority to reduce cancer with our firefighters and EMSs. So there's a lot of good stuff out there. You'll start seeing it on LIS. I recommend everybody start going on and looking at the bills being dropped. I haven't even started to sign on to any as co-patron or anything like that. Just trying to get to tread water right now. But we're gonna be robust. We're gonna be on the aggressive, but we're also gonna be fighting some defense. We've got to oppose things like there's going to be some anti-project labor agreement bills already, unfortunately, anti-prevailing wage legislation. I've heard rumors of that. Also, efforts to weaken the Wage Theft Prevention Act that we got from Jennifer Kelfoy last year that we all worked on. So we are going to be both doing offense and defense. But the great thing is being in the majority is most of it's offense. So anyway, thank you guys very much. And David and Jenny, I apologize because I will not be able to hear you, but I know what you're going to say because it's all good.
Thank you very much for being here. Be safe. See you. David, I'm sure both of you being labor people have seen a lot in your lifetime and know the history of labor and seen a lot of violence over the years when people want justice, when people ask for it, when people demand, especially people of color and minorities, we see this kind of uprising. So with that, I'll hand it right over to Labor to talk about, that you're president of SIU and Jenny, president of the Nova branch of the Federation. Talk about that. Talk about labor. Talk about what this all means to you going on in our country. Talk about whatever you want, since we're sort of off the rails in a lot of ways.
If it's okay, thank you. I'll be very brief, and then I'm going to our International Executive Board, where SEIU yesterday called on President Trump to resign or be removed from office, and we followed through on that. Thank you so much for having me here. I want to say, for those I don't know, I'm David Broder, and I'm honored to serve as the president of SEIU Virginia 512. Our union members are county employees in Fairfax and Loudoun, so they are many of your health department workers. They are your librarians, your park staff, your mental health CSB staff, as well as home care workers. And we work very closely with Ginny Diamond and her amazing team at Nova Labor and want to lift up her leadership. Here's what I just want to make a few very quick points. One, I'm glad that we can comment on what's happening because I want to be very clear that the labor movement is not simply about the pay and benefits of a few workers. It's about how all working people, regardless of the color of our skin, the language we speak, who we love, where we come from, how all of us can live with dignity. And when we talk about solidarity, it's the idea that if one of us doesn't have justice, none of us have justice. And so we want to be very clear that what happened the other day was a coup. It was an attack on our democracy. And also very specifically, this is about white supremacists rising up to deny the popular vote and to deny the votes specifically of Black and brown and immigrant voters. We have seen this in our history before, and the labor movement stands with everybody in calling this out for what it is, and we need to do so. The other thing I just want to say, and we were going to talk about essential workers. This past year, this pandemic has shown a spotlight on how our economy is broken. We all recognize that essential workers, whether they're home care providers, whether they're grocery store employees, they are the heroes who got us through this pandemic, right? We all know. And yet we can't ignore that those called essential are almost never treated essential. And that those on the front lines, again, disproportionately Black and brown workers and Black and brown women, when we say they're not treated as essential, it means they don't have a living wage. It means they don't have paid sick days. It means they don't have a voice at the table, and so much more. And again, that hurts all of us. And so we talked about bills. Jenny will talk about other bills, but the last thought I want to leave you with is the reason that we are in the labor movement. The reason it was great to hear Katherine, your comments, and Krista, yours. The reason that we do this is because we know that while we fight for good laws and policies, the best way for working people to earn what they deserve, to get a living wage, to get health care, is by forming a union and bargaining for a better future. It's why I, as a child, had food on the table and could go to see a doctor and never had to choose between the two of them. So while we fight for better policies and we desperately need a higher minimum wage quicker, we definitely need paid family leave, we also need to make sure we keep expanding collective bargaining, that we repeal right to work, that we fight wage theft, so that every worker can have a union and have a voice at the table. Thank you so much. I look forward to working with everybody. I'm going to put my email in the chat. I strongly encourage folks to send me an email if you would like to continue this conversation. I would love to
well, we will have you back. There's no doubt, Dave, because we really haven't. We need to do that this session. But I also know you're having a week of action starting January 19th, 16th, if you want. I know you're having it Zoom wise, but you are having a labor week of action. So we can also put that in the chat if you want people to help advocate for those bills you are championing. And then, so Krista, do you want to open up the next section?
Yes, definitely, Jenny. You know, David kind of turned it over to you in terms of the specific legislation that we need to be looking at. You know, Congressman Connolly said, it may seem like our contributions are small, but everything we do and say matters. And when he said that, I was really just thinking about all the postcards, all of the hours of standing in front of polling booths, and just all the letters to our members of the delegations. Talk more about what we can do specifically in terms of labor rights.
Krista, are you opening it up for me?
Yes, that's you, yes.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you very much for having me. It's great to see my brother David here. And I want to just tell you that I think this group is amazing, and thank you for all the incredible work you do. My name is Virginia Diamond. For those of you that don't know me, I just put my email in the chat because we put out an activity list every week also, and you're all welcome to come. The president of the Northern Virginia Labor Federation. We have 72 different unions that are associated with our federation, and we cover all of Northern Virginia down to Spotsylvania and out to the West Virginia border. Our members range from hotel room attendants and custodians and nurses and teachers and firefighters, flight attendants, pilots, federal government employees, janitors, and writers and actors. And so the whole range of the workforce, everyone that is part of the labor movement is part of our federation. Just to let you know that 2/3 of our members are women and people of color. Every president of the AFL-CIO in Virginia, Maryland, DC are women. And the 3 largest unions in the United States are headed by women. So I would like to say, though, that for every room attendant or janitor or hotel worker or carpenter on a construction site who was able to earn a good middle-class living wage with health care and paid sick leave and family leave and a pension. For every one, there are 9 other similarly situated workers who are struggling, who don't have unions, who are not getting enough to support their families, who are struggling now. And so our primary mission is to allow all of the rest of the workers who are not permitted to bargain, to allow them to bargain, because we feel that this is the best way to empower workers. In regards to this terrible event that just took place and what we heard from Gerry, I just want to say that I think that if there's any central event that has contributed to the erosion of our civil society over the past 30 years, it has been the destruction of unions. And I say that because you cannot have a middle-class democracy without a strong labor movement. When I started out in the labor movement, I was an organizer for the International Ladies Garment Workers Union and the Furniture Workers Union. Organizing those factories, none of those factories exist anymore. They've all gone overseas. And at that time, we had more than 30% of the workforce in unions. Currently, there's less than 6% of the private sector workers are members of unions. It's not because people don't want to have unions, it's because the corporate class decided 30 years ago that they were going to de-unionize. Anyone that tries to unionize their workforce is threatened. They're told that they're going to lose their job. There simply isn't a right to have unions. And I do believe that if we're going to bring our society back together, we need to deal with income inequality, with the concentration of wealth and power. We need to allow unions to exist. So that is why my message today is that I think our fundamental issue for the Virginia General Assembly is to repeal the right to work law.
Yes.
So that is what I would say, because it's an existential threat to the existence of unions, and it sends a message that that unions are not welcome in Virginia. And I think there's nothing more important for the Democratic Party to do than to communicate that they stand with the working class. Whenever Republicans have flipped legislatures, the first thing they've done is institute right to work laws. That contributed to the election of Trump, because unions were broken in Wisconsin, Michigan, et cetera. So I think that the first thing that the Virginia Democrats need to do is to repeal right to work and send the message that we want to restore the middle class and give workers that right to sit at the bargaining table, to have a voice on the job, and to have the dignity that all workers deserve. So thank you for letting me make that comment, and thanks for your help.
No, it's great. I was just curious about, Richard Trunka had spoke to this about Biden's plan. Do you feel like it's the federal plan is going to help Virginia? I mean, some of the, what did they call that? I'm just lost my place here, but I know that he came out strong for Biden, saying that he had a plan around unions, bringing manufacturing back. And what's your feelings on that?
Two things. First of all, there's a federal bill called the PRO Act, which is to protect the right to organize. We need that because right now companies can fire workers who organize and with impunity. There are no penalties for that. So we need that PRO Act. We have not been able to convince Senator Warner to sign on to the PRO Act. So we do need the support of our Democratic leaders for that. Secondly, I think it's just important to emphasize that unions are in all sectors. People associate it with manufacturing, but that's only because we used to be a manufacturing nation.
Right.
But unions belong in retail. They belong in hospitals. They belong in all businesses. And so, but people need to have the right to form unions, and then they will be able to earn middle-class salaries again, and it'll really create a much more unified nation.
No, I agree. And I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio, so you appreciate that. I saw the decline in when they laid off all those workers, and the steel mills were closed in that one day, in that Black Friday. So I saw my town go downhill for 30 years, and now I saw my town go from Democratic to Trump, and it's very hard. And I think they're all interrelated. And so I really appreciate your words on this and letting us know that our senator doesn't support right to work. This, as activists, what we need to do is activate, because now we have majority in Virginia, and now with this great win in Georgia, now we have to hold people accountable, because what I do not want to see is sliding back to any idea about normal. And so I think that what we can do with your help, and I, maybe talk to you later about this, as activists, how we're going to really make sure that happens. So thank you, Virginia. It was a pleasure to have you here today. And with that segue, if we can call up Julia Biggins on the screen, Dr. PhD Julia Biggins, and why this relates with labor and COVID and essential workers, Julia, is you are an infectious scientist, a doctor. You also ran for Congress, but this is essential for workers. I saw poultry plant workers that aren't unionized being forced to work sick and speed up the lines. And so this is interrelated, the pandemic, the unrest, our inability now to sort of get these vaccines fast enough. So I'm so grateful you're here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to have this opportunity to share some information about COVID. And you're right, this is cutting across all areas. I mean, our essential workers do the work, they're interacting with the public all day, every day, and they haven't been prioritized until recently to get the vaccines that are coming out. I was so glad to hear from Ralph Northam during his press conference on Wednesday that although we're in the 1A vaccine phase now for healthcare workers in hospitals and nursing home residents, the next group is essential workers. And I think just today it was released that we'll be going to a phase 1B on Monday. And the order I just saw on social media was released, and we have police and fire first, and then correctional facilities, and then teachers, and then we move on down the line to manufacturing and grocery store workers, but they're all in that next phase to receive the vaccine. So I'm really excited that we're prioritizing this incredibly important part of our labor force.
I don't know if this is your area of expertise, but with all that ability, and probably Ginny knows this because this is the service workers are there, that the nurses, the people are supposed to deliver this. These essential workers also are the ones, is our infrastructure ready in Virginia? I'm not sure if you know that, but if you can speak to it, and then just how we're going to see that roll out. I mean, this is going to be important to get it in people's arms.
Right. And I think that supply of the vaccine is not an issue. That's continuing to come from the vaccine companies, manufacturers, but it is the infrastructure that I think not just Virginia, but across the country, we haven't received the funds necessary until recently to have the kind of effort that we need to have the vaccines getting into as many people as possible. And especially because right now it's being pushed on down to the healthcare workers that are already overburdened and burned out and just been dealing with the pandemic on a 24/7 basis since the beginning. We're asking them to be the ones to administer the shots. So I think that we'll be seeing a better infrastructure being stood up, but the governor didn't have many timelines. So we'll just have to see and be patient.
Well, in the sense of updating us on right now with the COVID, I think maybe as a scientist, as a person that's been studying COVID, right now where we're at, I mean, what on this day of this horrible day, that's on another 9/11 for our country, this invasion, we had the biggest death around the country from COVID, right? And so this is going on. It's just unbelievable. So what are you seeing in the sense of numbers? How can we make sure we continue doing the right thing so we are just waiting for these vaccines and not just making this thing run rapid? And then the UK, the different strain of it, what we should look out for that strain and what that means for us right now.
Right. There's so much for us to deal with right now on all fronts. And with the vaccines, they're both available. They're both very safe, very effective. And I do think that we have, although the numbers keep climbing, I don't think that we've seen the peak yet from holiday travel. We saw millions of people traveling by air across the country when they had been told not to. And so I still think we're too close to that time to really see any sort of peak from that surge. And again, I know it sounds like a broken record, but we just need to stay home, wear a mask, and not make things worse so that the vaccine can finally get that edge, when it starts to become more available to the general public. And in terms of the variant, it's being studied right now. And I saw that I think Pfizer, or maybe it was Moderna, released that their vaccine is still effective against the UK variant and the South African variant. But it is looking like it's more transmissible, which means it can spread faster in our community. So again, the same precautions hold, just to stay home, wear a mask, keep your distance, and take it seriously. I mean, it's out there, and young people are being affected too.
Well, after I saw these people down in even the district without any mask, I thought about just the risk during this time. And I think we can look in history back to the 1918, very similar political conditions, even around our topic today of labor, fighting for labor rights, women's rights, all this kind of intersexuality. It's just, we have to learn from history. So,
yeah.
But with that said, I appreciate, I know we were going to do a little longer segment, but I so appreciate you being here. And I'm hoping we get this under control. And I think that we got to get that message to people that, yes, the vaccine's here, but we have to make sure that we do everything we can so the vaccine is effective.
Right. Give it a chance. Yep.
Seeing you, and stay healthy and keep on. And we love our scientists because science matters and facts matter.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for our next segment, we were going to do an activist spotlight, but our great friend Diane Dresner, I told her we're going to do it next week because I want to make sure we give her the amount of time she deserves because she is making masks on the front line. So Diane, thank you so kindly for allowing us to spotlight you next week. And with that, I just want to tell everybody, we're going to wrap up. We have a great last way. We're going to do a poem, Still I Rise, because we want to do it in honor of our fallen Capitol Police officer, and also just in general, what we're going through now together. But before I do, I also want to send a thank you out. Last week, we announced that we are doing our network Nova Live, the Power Lunch, and we started a backer program where you can financially support what we do. Very small way to join us, and we had 17 people join already. But we don't really want to talk about that today, but we just wanted to make sure we said thank you, and we will just talk about it another time. But thank you so much for your support. And with that, I'm trying to think if we have any other announcements.
One more, that after we do the poem, if people want to stick around for a few minutes and chat, we'll be open to schmoozing.
Schmoozing, yeah. So if anybody wants to stay, I just want to thank all the guests for being here. Virginia Diamond, thank you. David Broder, to our delegates, Kathy Tran and Paul Krizek, and of course, Julia Biggins, Dr. Biggins, thank you so much for all your work, and for our audience and our community, because I have to say that we are committed, like Gerry Connolly said, to stay in it, not just to win, but to really build a community we believe in. So, and this show, we want to continue doing it throughout this whole election period. So we're committed to being here for you every Friday. So let's just say thank you again, and let's go ahead and open it up to Maya Angelou.